So, hello everyone and welcome to the fifth edition of Encora Talks. Today our topic is mapping and improving UX maturity levels. Our speaker is Celso Miserani. Celso is a lead product designer working with startups and large companies to bridge the gap between business, design, and development. Using techniques and learnings from the startup world, Celso works collaboratively with clients to bring use-centered pragmatism to projects, focus on designing and developing MVPs. Celso holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Campinas. Please let us know your questions through the chat. We will be answering them in our Q&A section after the presentation. Hello, Celso, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Danny, for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for being here. It means a lot. So today we'll talk about mapping and improving UX maturity levels, right? And this is based on a few research that was done by a few key companies. That first one is Nielsen Norma Group, and the second one is Envision. They did global-wide research, and we're going to talk a bit about that. So as a disclaimer, as I just said, this presentation is based on a series of articles by Nielsen Norman Group describing the different levels of maturity for a company in terms of UX. So for today, we are going to cover what are these UX maturity levels, what do they mean, what levels are there, and making the results tangible a bit, talking about some impacts that these maturity levels have on some key KPIs for a company. Okay, so what are the UX maturity levels? That is a measurement of an organization's desire and ability to successfully deliver user-centered design. So, and that encompasses a few key things, right? A few key variables are involved in that. First is strategy. So UX leadership, planning, and resource prioritization. Culture is the second one, UX knowledge and cultivating UX careers and practitioners growth. You have process there as well. You have the systematic use of UX research and design methods, and you have outcomes as well, which is intentionally defining and measuring the results produced by UX work, right? So one thing that is important to get clear here, and by the way, we are going to talk a bit more about each of these clusters here when we talk about the levels themselves, but let's just as a disclaimer here, as a point of focus before moving forward, is that user-centered design is about focusing on people, period, right? So one common pitfall that companies fall into is that we need to establish processes. There's too much focus on the process, too much focus on putting processes in place and best practices in place, when at its core, the level of maturity that you're going to achieve over time is always based on how is your focus on people, how strongly are you focusing on people, right? So user-centered design is about focusing on people and their systems to solve the right problems, not about following processes. This is really important. So what levels are there? There are 6 for the Nielsen Norman Group study, okay? First one is absent, second one is limited, third one is emergent, fourth one is structured, fifth is integrated, and sixth is user-driven. So we're going to go over each one of them in more detail in a bit, but for the absent one, it's all about UX being ignored, non-existent, and undiscovered, all the way through user-driven, where UX is beloved, reproducible, and habitual. It is the norm, okay? So let's go over level by level. We have the first one, which is absent. And this is what I'm going to do for each of the levels, okay? I'm going to go over a few points that describe that level of maturity, and then we are going to talk a bit of how do we progress to the next level, right? So for the absent one, we have UX is not being planned, people that think that users are ignored. You have companies that inherited processes that were not really focused on the users here. That's usually what happens. And then you might even have conscious developers, but without organizational support. Okay. To progress here, it's all about education. So you need to focus on education. You need to show what UX is. You need to show its benefits to the company and to the customers. and you need to begin doing UX work by showing how to. So that is really important. It's not enough to just do UX work, but you need to also show how to do it to your peers, right? So educate the people around you. That's how you move from the absent level to the next one, which is the limited level. Okay. So for the limited level, what we have here is that a company that approaches UX erratically. So you have initiatives being born here and there, but they quickly die, uh, and that is for a few good reasons. Uh, a few companies that might fall into this level are companies that have UX as a legal necessity, and there are a few of them. You have here isolated individuals who takes initiative instead of teams, instead of company-wide policies. Okay, but as I said, the initiatives might die rather quickly if there is not enough support. UX here is low priority. You have no budget for UX, all related roles, and UX happens in silos while company sits at stage one. So you have teams, specific teams or specific individuals, generally speaking, individuals, isolated individuals who takes the initiative and try to bring UX to the table, but that happens in silos. And everyone else in the company sits at stage one, which is the absence stage that we just talked about. All right, so now that we talked about what does limited look like, let's talk about how to progress from it, okay? Here, it's all about focusing on building processes. So one thing that helps with that a lot is to learn the methods, learn in a way that you can show to other people and that you can get that structure of the UX work that you are doing strong, so that can resonate with other people in your team and in your company. You need to establish rituals. That is a really strong way to establish a habit of talking about UX, of working with UX, both for you specifically, for your team, or for other teams that work with you. You can showcase small wins. That helps a lot as well to gain traction, and cultivate relationships with UX champions. And you have some of those, you probably have some of those inside your company already. Those are people that are eager to work with UX. Even if they don't have a UX background, they are eager to learn, and it's a subject that they are interested into, but they have no way there is not anyone to facilitate that process for them. So it's important to cultivate those relationships so that you can have all the people that can grow strong with you while working to mature your company UX wise, right? So it's all about gaining traction here. To build processes is to gain traction, okay? That is to level up to the emergent level, which is level 3. So for the emergent level, what we have here is more teams working with UX, right? Before you had like individuals or one team or few key teams working with UX. Here we have more teams working with UX. You have UX planning happening. You have budget for UX here. UX efforts are stable. You have initiatives, but that are still based on the individuals. And that is a point of concern here for this level, is that those initiatives are not company-wide, are not company-wide policies or best practices. There are initiatives based on individuals. So if there is not enough support from the leadership of the company, those initiatives might, maturity-wise, those initiatives might be stuck on this level. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Okay. Uh, you have UX roles, but they're usually not the right fit. And what usually happens is that you begin by hiring generalists, right? You begin by hiring designers that can do it all, designers that can do research, that can do prototyping, that can do testing, that can do mapping, that can do strategy. Even you have multiple requirements that to fill as a generalist, but what you want to do in order to move to the next step is to start having more specific specialized people in their roles, like research, dedicated researchers, dedicated prototypers, dedicated mappers, dedicated strategists, And the way that you cluster those roles and the way that you divide those expertise is really up to you. There are many ways to do that in the market, being done that, but it's really up to you to define what's the best fit for the people in the objective that they need to achieve in the day-to-day projects, right? So to have a lot of generalists that do it all is not really the way to move forward from here, okay? You have here no systematic UX processes, and that comes from a ripple effect from the other points that we just talked about. So UX can be consistent here, and it usually is, but it has no real impact strategically speaking. Okay, you have impact in the development, you have impact in the time to market, but the strategically speaking, you have no impact on the company. All right. We are going to talk about KPIs for the relationship between KPIs and design later on the next levels. All right. So to progress from the emergent level, what you need to do is focus on building a culture of support. And this is where things start to become a bit tricky, right? Because before we were talking about focusing on education, focusing on building processes, and those were things that you could ran through by yourself, right? Or from you, that can come from you or come from a team. But to change a culture and to build a culture of support, that starts to become a bit tricky. But that's what needs to happen. And this is like work that you need to do day to day, bit by bit, baby steps, right? Uh, it's easy to get stuck here in this level, assuming it's enough. That's why you need to go back to build to impact the company in such a deep level, which is the culture, right? Building processes, building stronger processes, and educating even more. It's not really that enough to move through, because the inertia here is higher on this level. One thing that you can do is to gather momentum across the organization and project. So leverage what you are already doing and showcase that to the company so that you can bit by bit keep building that culture of support around design. Okay, you need to prove UX value, and you need to have patience. That's no really other way around it, unless you have like key people from management, from leadership, supporting your efforts and helping you go through that effort of building a culture of support, then that's going to require patience. Okay. When you do it, you go to the next level, which is a structured level. Here, what you have is UX's value is recognized. All right. You have one or many UX teams established. You have common knowledge about design across teams that even don't work with design day to day. You have research throughout product lifecycle being done, both at the beginning and at the end. Other groups are involved when you work with UX. They are using UX methods as well. But one thing here that may happen is that politics and miscommunication may cause misallocation of resources and overspending on UX. And that's a weird thing to say, right? Because we are talking about evolving from level 1 to level 6 when we talk about UX. So every step of the way, we are getting stronger processes, stronger definitions, stronger work being done, stronger results, bigger results. But there is one thing that might hinder that, which is those misallocation of resources and overspending. It's important to keep it's important to be mindful of where you are investing in everything, by the way, right? We're not just talking about UX here, but technology as well, development, front end, back end, everything. So it's important to be mindful of how well you're spending your budget, your efforts in design. Okay, to progress from this level, what you need to do is focus on strategy. And when I talk strategy, I talk the strategic impact of design inside the company. Okay, When you're scaling, ensure UX leadership. That's really important so that you can focus on strategy. Define user-centered success metrics. That's really important as well. Always do discovery before delivery. In order to be more strategic, you need to have more strategic conversations as well. And that involves having discovery conversations before delivery conversations. You have to be iterative. And you need to do proactive UX strategy instead of just focusing on catering to a few big customers. And this is one of the places that companies usually fall into, right? You are catering to a few big customers, everything is all right, their feedback is awesome, you're having a nice flow of revenue. The resale is really easy, or the projects that you conduct with your clients is really good. If you are an agency type company, if you are a product type company, you have more monthly active users coming in, and everything looks great. But in order to reap more of the key results and the valuable results that UX has to give you, and to do that, moving to the next level, you need to be proactive when you talk UX strategy. Okay, instead of just keeping the inertia of focusing on catering to a few big customers. All right. So when you do that, you go to the next level, which is integrated level, level 5. So here, what we have is universal UX. Everyone talks about UX inside the company, right? By the way, this is one key point that I feel like I didn't put that much of an emphasis on at the beginning of the conversation today. But when you talk about maturity levels, you talk about the maturity levels inside a company. Okay, you don't talk about maturity levels inside a team or inside a project. You need to talk company wide. You can do some analysis for specific teams. That's okay as well, and that renders like good insights, that actionable insights that you can work on later. But what we're talking about here for this study is to evaluate your entire company and not just a team. Okay, so you have universal UX here. UX is efficient and effective, and you have innovation in UX methods. And by that, what I mean is you're doing such a good UX work, and you're working so much with methods that you see that on the market, like a service blueprint, you're doing prototyping, wireframing, you're doing empathy interviews, you're doing usability testing, you're doing all of the tools and methods that you have available in order to conduct your work, and you learn so much by doing that, that you can innovate on the methods themselves, right? You can iterate on the methods that you use and bring that back to the community. You have important success metrics that are focused on, all driven by UX. You have business results here. You start to get some key business results here. Okay? So how do we progress to the next level? We need to focus on establishing user-centered outcome metrics at the highest organization level. So when you talk about UX metrics, you have a few key of them that the UX has a big impact. For a product, for a startup that has a product, just as an example, you have impact on daily active users, monthly active users. Yes, you do, but the churn that you have alongside the journey of the application is an important one to evaluate and to measure. And the rate of task completion is important to measure as well. To mention two of the metrics that you can use throughout your product. Okay. So here we have the user-driven level. And by the way, the how to progress from the level 5 to level 6 is rather simple, because those two levels are there is a bit of a mixed area here in the middle, where you go from level 5 to level 6 and then from level 6 to level 5. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But the level 5 is very strong, and you should generally aim for that. The user-driven level, let's go over the user-driven level, shall we? you know what I mean when I'm done with this slide. So here UX is the norm, okay? Prioritization here is always based on research and knowledge of user needs. Leaders, teams, and individual are user-centered. Everyone plans for change and innovation. You keep contributing back to industry standards as you do such a great and a strong UX work, and you have a user-centered business vision. This is what I meant when I said that the level 5 and level 6 they go back and forth between themselves, because the vision is something that, usually speaking, is generally written in stone, right? When you talk about for the next, at least for the next year, next 5 years even. But the way to get there needs to be guided by design to be in this level, right? And that requires an effort, a company-wide effort that is hard to sustain unless the company was born with the design mentality and or even got a stronger design mentality with time, but iterated to be like a design focused company. It's hard to keep at this level, okay? Especially when we talk about companies. Remember that we were talking in the beginning, companies that inherited processes that were not focused on the users. It's a journey to get here, but it's well worth it. In order to progress here, and I know what you're thinking, so this is the last level. How do we progress from here? This is all about keeping yourselves at this level. Is to focus on keeping momentum. Okay, it is difficult to maintain here, and you may have some problems like resource bloat, conflicting goals, or even politics come into play and bring you back to level 5. But one thing that you can do in order to keep that momentum as you grow your company, as you bring new people in, is to educate new team members, right? To make sure that everyone is on the same page around how do we conduct things, the design work, and why we are focused on people first, and why we're focused on our users and our customers in order to deliver value. Okay, those are the 6 levels. So Nielsen Normal Group, they have a quiz as well that you can take to evaluate to find out which level you are in. And I'm going to show that QR code again at the end, but before closing this conversation here, this presentation, we still have a conversation a bit, but to close out this presentation, I want to talk about a bit of the tangible results that you can get from these maturity levels, from advancing from one maturity level to another. Okay, so there is another study to talk about that. I'm going to cite another study which was done by Envision. They did a worldwide research with more than 2,000 companies to find out and cluster their different maturity levels. And what they found, and the way they clustered it, was from level 1 to level 5, okay, differently from the Nielsen Norman Group 1. So for level 1, you have the producers. For level 2, you have connectors. For level 3, you have the architects. Level 4, scientists. And level 5, visionaries. So you go all the way from having no UX, or UX only being the specialty that makes things pretty, to the visionary level, which is where you have UX guiding the strategy and conducting strategy work as well, and having the strategy being user-centered. Okay? Here is one example, and I'm just going to show this example here of some of the results that you can get going from level 1 to level 5 in this study. And the parameters for the levels for the Envision study are somewhat similar to the Nielsen Normal Group 1. So I'm going to go ahead and ask for permission to extrapolate these results to that study as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say that if you progress from level 1 to level 6 in the Nielsen Normal Group basis and parameters, you can reap these results as well. Okay, so we have here 4 key things being talked about. We have revenue, cost saving, time to market, and valuation of the company. So you can see that those are really strategic and very important KPIs, right? So the question here that was asked was, our design team has had proven impact on. And when you talk about revenue, level 5 companies has 4 times the impact of level 1 companies. You have 92% of the companies from level 5 saying that they had proven impact on revenue, and only 22% of level 1 companies saying that they had uh, proven impact on revenue. For cost savings, you have 5 times as much value being generated. For the time to market, you have 6 times the impact, and for valuation, you have 26 times the impact. So you can see that the results are pretty expressive, right? So here we have the QR code again that you can take a test to check out which maturity level you are on for the Nielsen Normal Group study. And this is it. This is everything that I wanted to talk about. Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you, Celsi, for all this valuable information. Now we're ready to start with our Q&A. So our first question is, what should be the 5 major points to keep in mind when designing a UX for any product?
Nice. Thank you for the question. Uh, I think we should go back to the basics for this one. So, first thing that you should keep in mind is to have the problem that you're trying to solve really crisply embedded into the discussion that you have in day to day, right? Then, after defining what is the problem that you're trying to solve, you need to define who. You need to understand actually who has this problem. You need to understand about the person, about the persona that has that problem that you are trying to solve. And then what's the proposed solution, right? And then after that, do they actually fit? Because sometimes we investigate the problem, we investigate the solution, we have a strong hypothesis for the solution, but they don't actually fit together. So that fit, which is called the problem solution fit, needs to be studied as well. That is from a lens of getting the basics right. And then you have a definition of UX by, I think this is it. This is from the Interaction Design Foundation, that they define UX by a 4-layer pyramid, where the first layer is utility. So first of all, something has to be useful, right?
Okay.
And that is the problem solution fit that we were just discussing. And then the second layer is usability. So after having something being useful, how do you make it usable, right? Because if you have side by side 2 things that are useful, the most used one will be the most usable one, aside from the utility. And then after usability, you have the desirability, which is the third layer. And then this thing starts to get a bit more tricky and is not really set in stone. Like, how do you make something desirable, right?
Mhm.
You get into the more crafty part of the design that is not really set in stone, but is important just as much. And then the fourth layer is brand experience, where you have
Mhm.
the brand of the product or the service that is being sold, that is being designed, comes into play really strongly. So you have 4 layers: utility, usability, desirability, and brand experience.
Thank you, Celso. What path did you follow to get to where you are, and what advice, books do you recommend to grow professionally?
Nice. So the start that I had in my career was actually in college, beginning of college. I started participating in the junior enterprises movement, and that I started working with marketing. And marketing at the time had a lot. It was actually graphic design disguised as marketing, right? It was not really marketing that we were doing, but we started doing marketing really well at the time. But the graphic designs part called to me, and then the course that I did, I majored in computer science. So the a lot of people wanted to bring startups to life, and they needed someone to design the screens, right? So I went
Mhm.
from graphic design to UI design, and things naturally progressed from that, from UI design to UX design to product design, and product design to business design. and
Thank
the
you.
books, right?
Yeah.
So the books, there is one very important book that everyone that works with design knows about. This book, which is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. And if you already read this book, I recommend that you read it again because the experiences that we go through professionally and personally makes the perspective of that book change over time. So I recommend that if you read it already, I recommend that you read it again. If you didn't, I really recommend that you do.
Thank you, Celso. Can you talk about the relationship between UX and design thinking?
Sure, sure thing. So, okay, let's put it this way. Uh, Design thinking is a really great way to democratize design. It's a really great way to bring everyone to the table, regardless of their background. So you get design, which is generally speaking, a very the jargons can get really tricky real quick, right? But the way that design thinking can democratize that and get a conversation going, get a workshop into place for with 4, 5, 6 different people from very different backgrounds, not necessarily related with technology or design,
Mhm.
and make that discussion happen and make that discussion being fruitful. I think that is really great. So that's the way that I would put the relationship between that's where I would place the relationship between UX and design thinking.
Okay, Celso, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please keep an eye out for more webinars that we'll be hosting soon. We also invite you to watch the recorded webinars we have posted on Encora.com. Thank you.
Thank you.